Welcome back to the console room. In this video, we're going to be looking at Kaiju number 8, chapter 20, starting with a brief summary. From there, we'll talk about the highlights, important story and character points, and just kind of anything else we find interesting. With that out of the way, let's get started. So yeah, chapter 20. We are looking at the actual fight between, I guess, Vice Captain Kikuro and Kafka in his Kaiju form. So, I was really looking forward to this more than I thought I was. At first, nothing too crazy. I mean, Kikoro comes out pretty aggressively. We see him get a couple of early hits in. From there, surprisingly, a lot of information dropped just after the first attack. We get a little bit of information about the actual suits and what composes them. Turns out you were right. They are actually made out of kaiju fibers and cells. So that was really interesting. And then that pushes everything kind of to the next level. We actually see Kikoro use 92% of the power in the suit, and he does this crazy double-page spread where he just goes all out on Kafka, and literally his movements are defined as inhuman, which, just throwing a point in while we're going through this, that's kind of interesting, because again, when you find out that the whole idea of these suits was that they're based on kaijus, to have it described as inhuman, there's like an irony there almost. So
because they're playing, they're basically using fire versus fire, essentially.
Yeah, precisely, right? So Kikoro stays on the offensive, and we find out that he knows where Kafka's core is, which we'll come back to that point because that's actually really interesting, because that was something I had been wondering. So he's staying on the offensive. Kafka can't really keep up. He doesn't have the energy for regenerating. And we also find out about the Kaiju ranking system, which we'll come back to. And then basically a couple of crazy attacks by Kikoro, Kafka finally decides to fight back. And he's able to take everything that's thrown at him and counter with this one punch that ends up breaking Kikoro's blade and ends up stunning him. He uses that time to get away, and we're left on the final page with Kikoro sitting there, and Kaiju number 8 has escaped. Great color panel, by the way.
Yeah. And you no, I was all gonna say, even from the last page, you can see the frustration, even though that is panned out for the character.
Yeah, for sure. I don't disagree. With that in mind, though, so last week, man, or I guess over the last couple of weeks, you've been, theorizing based off just kind of the spinal structure of the suits, that there's got to be some sort of relationship there, and that came to fruition in terms of the information this week. We finally find out that it's cells and muscle fibers that are being harvested from kaiju in order to make these suits.
And it makes sense too. Like I said before, like the previous panels, and every time when Kafka, is that how you pronounce his name, right? Kafka?
Yeah.
Kafka, anytime he uses like abilities,
or I guess Kafka, I don't know. Sorry, my apologies for cutting you up. It's Kafka.
Yeah. Anytime he uses his abilities, his like spine kind of like, I don't want to say lights up, but it's very similar to like Godzilla. When he charges up his like, I was gonna call it Unibeam, but you know what I mean. His
the fire breath.
Yeah.
So
it's very similar to that. So I'm like, oh man, their structure's obviously the same when you see them use their suits, where you see the spinal core. So it makes sense. I was like, okay, that it's like it tells you the world without showing without telling, until obviously they say it. And it makes sense that Kafka would know, because like he's in the same division, so to speak. So
yeah, well, exactly. He's responsible for, I'm sure, collecting a lot of those muscle fibers as well.
Right? That's a good point, from his old job. So
yeah,
why wouldn't he know, right?
Precisely, right? So that, I think that's kind of interesting, and it makes a lot of sense. What is also, kind of continuing off of this whole idea that the humans are using, kaijus as a base. Again, as I was mentioning in the quick little summary, that Kikoro's movements end up being defined as inhuman, and that's kind of just really interesting because the whole idea of the defense force is to be humans protecting humans, but if you're using power beyond that of a human and stuff like that, right? You kind of become something else, right? And that's just really captured in the inhuman term.
No, for sure. And like with this action, like with this quick, I don't want to say quick fight, but quick encounter with his vice captain, he was definitely on the back burner, like throughout most of the fight. Obviously, because he's fighting his vice captain, so you can't like, go all out. But even then, I feel like he was still having trouble regardless. Yeah,
Oh, for sure.
which goes to show like how strong the vice captain is, or how strong like the whole like division is. So makes you wonder how like the other fighters or the other players are.
Absolutely. Admittedly, Kikoru is a good match, as we've established and kind of talked about last chapter.
Mhm.
But you're still completely right, especially with 92% of the power being drawn out.
Yeah,
It's Kafka's definitely never interacted with a character or an enemy like quite on that level as of yet. Even
no,
the fungus kaiju wasn't at this you know strength level. So it's crazy. He should be on the defensive. With the whole kind of idea of we're having the percentages and now we get like a kaiju power level 2. What's kind of interesting is I could definitely see there being a kaiju mole inside of the defense force and using these
mm.
suits as indicators for who would make good subjects to try to turn into humanoid kaijus or something like that.
Oh yeah, for sure. And like you said with the ranking systems, or like at least something new that we discovered where they which will make him a Dai Kaiju.
Yeah.
So it's like a title above a regular Kaiju. And I was actually trying to do a quick Google search, and all I did was type in Dai, and then it just says title. So you know, it can really it's kind of like a simple thing. I guess it's like a level above. You know what I mean?
Okay. Well, that's kind of interesting because we get a name, but we don't really get a fortitude scale.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, how strong is an 8.0? For example, if, Kafka's like an
Oh,
8.0, what was
yeah.
the fungus kaiju?
Oh, that's a good point. And it makes you and it's funny because their grading systems remind me of a earthquake. So that was very kind of like because
Oh,
yeah,
mhm.
'cause kaijus are very like obviously not like humanity's against like these kaijus who are like basically destroying humanity and the environment within itself. So to scale them as like technically like earthquakes, like a 8.8, 8.0 or 7.5 or whatever, it's kind of it's fitting for them to
I
use.
agree. That's really that dude, that's a great observation. I didn't even think about a Richter scale.
Yeah.
So, I actually wanted to see how many levels there are on that. So, actually, to be honest, if he is an 8, that's the second highest. Which one, I guess, speaks naturally to the truth of Kafka's power, like how strong he is, if it's
Yeah.
that high right off the bat. And then second, if the vice captain's still, slicing and dicing something of that magnitude, how crazy strong is that guy?
Oh, for sure. I mean,
Right?
like, mhm. And I can't imagine how he is against like. I mean, he does say he's only really good against like mid size kaiju's, but it really makes you wonder how even if with the bigger ones, like what are their magnitudes? Like, what are their skill? Are they just like a 5 and they're just manageable? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. So that's a great point as well. I think, to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if later on we will see something that breaks the scale. You know, it's like,
Oh,
oh, it's tougher than a 9, right? And everybody's like, oh, we need to get a new phrasing and a new level for this one.
yeah, or like it's like unscalable or something like that, something crazy. And it definitely reminds me of another aside from earthquakes, like Pacific Rim when they scale their monsters, where I think they say like level 4, level 5, or something like that, something like smaller than that. But
Okay.
going back to the action, I mean, he quickly found his like core, so that was pretty interesting. And then obviously, Kefla kind of countered, but that was kind of like a good insight. Like, wow, like the vice captain could just like he was gunning everywhere. Like he was gunning for his like leg. He's trying to like immobilize him. He's going for his hand. It was kind of crazy. You could see like within this fight where he was trickling him down essentially
Yeah, it's all very like, calculated, right?
for sure.
It's
Hmm.
it's like, even if you have high regenerative abilities, missing a leg is still missing a leg, right? It doesn't matter if that leg comes back to an extent. For sure. And what's also kind of interesting about that too is how quickly he detected the core. And then that made me question, is Kafka's heart his core, or does he have both, or is it like a two in one? Because that's interesting too. I hadn't even considered that, because how easy is it for him to die if he technically already got shot through the chest by the fungus kaiju? So does his heart become his core, and then his core is then movable?
That's good. That's actually a good question. I don't know. I would think his core is probably like similar to where like I want to say maybe on his right side, I guess. I thought it would be his heart, but maybe it's movable. Maybe he can harden it. That's why he could take some hits. I mean, he has a regenerative like body. Like even before right when he strikes the sword on that panel, his leg is still regenerating, as you can see. So I don't know if maybe he could move it, or maybe he's just he could shield it up, just like another new technique we see with Kefka in his Kaiju form, where he could, I guess, put teeth around open wounds, I guess, if you want to call them that.
Or
So
or any part of it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense. I was going to bring that up as well because that almost confused me when I first saw it. I was like, wait, he turned and like caught that, but then on the next page, it's not there. So, but no, he that was an interesting technique. Is
yeah,
he? Do you think maybe that's his body's version of stitching itself back together? It like starts with
uh,
teeth and
I
then
don't
turns into
know.
that.
I don't think so. I think it's more like he could just, I don't want to say move his body parts around, but he could just kind of like manipulate it, I guess. Because he could quickly regenerate, but it's not fully. But I think I think it's more like it's a harden. Like, all right, well, I'm getting attacked, so I need to harden it even more. So like, okay, I have my strong teeth, because we've seen it in previous fight where like his mouth extends. You know what I mean when he does that loud shout. So
That's fair, but extending your jaw versus creating a secondary one on your midsection is a
yeah.
little different.
Yeah, but it's funny. It's funny that you say that, but it's like it's very believable. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess he could do that. Like I don't know. I just kind of like, yeah,
I
sure.
do get where you're coming from because he's already split his leg into, like a four-pronged anchor that he's
Mm-hmm.
then used to create an even stronger punch. So I don't know. I guess maybe their form is just super malleable, and
Yeah,
whatever you can kind of swing in, you can kind of swing in.
for sure. And even like towards the end of this fight, right at when he escapes, you can see the frustration like in the last 2 pages where you don't see his face except for the top. And he's really mad about that.
Yeah, well, there's definitely a status quo, right? You're
Hmm.
working under the strongest agent in Earth's defense force currently.
Yeah.
So, when your captain's the captain of all captains and you kind of screw up a good chance to get your hands on a numbered kaiju, that's pretty important. So,
Hmm.
and also, again, when you're talking all about your hand-to-hand combat ability and how this guy's like a perfect enemy for you, and you've removed your power limiter, you've kind of checked off all of these boxes of, okay, I need to win this fight. So when you still lose, there's definitely going to be a bunch of heartbreak with that for sure.
Yeah.
But
Most
I
definitely.
mean, to be honest, we needed him to be like that, right? The story can't go anywhere if Kafka gets caught in chapter 20. So
Oh no, for sure. I mean, it could have gone to a lot of different places, but yeah, no, I agree. But other than that, I can't really think of anything else other than like it's a great action chapter. Like like all the chapters when it comes to the action with this series, it's really enjoyable because it's like it's high octane. Our main character is essentially a monster. He's not. I mean, yes, he's the hero, but he's in the opposite end visually. So
no,
and
I agree.
yeah, and I like when I think about like the next chapter, I don't know. I mean, maybe he'll just obviously revert back and see the consequences, not his consequences, but like the aftermath of this whole battle. That's all I can really think of.
Yeah, well, we'll have to wait and see. I agree kind of with all your points. I also just briefly want to bring attention to the last page being color.
Yeah,
That
that
to me was super, super interesting.
yeah, it's funny because I remember when you texted me, or actually no, we were reading it while we were what were we doing, gaming, and yeah, we were like basically our live reaction, and I was like, oh wow, like I was not expecting that like color page towards the end, so that was really a surprise because I don't usually see that ever. Not
I
that I
was
care.
gonna say I can't. I was that yeah, that was gonna be my exact point as well. I can't ever think of an instance where I've seen a colored final page.
Yeah, like I could think of like, oh, it's the final chapter, sure, or like the final page of
Yeah, yeah, of the
series.
final chapter. Yeah,
Of the series,
exactly.
yeah,
Right. Yeah.
like, oh, yeah, like, it's like a to get so it's really nice to kinda have that. And is it about time for that break, and that's why we're getting that? Is it, like, next week
It could be. It could be because no, it's because while we're recording this on the 14th, it'll release on I guess like the 17th, right? And then uh
after that will be the break.
but it'll be a point one. It'll be like a
Yeah,
20.1 chapter. It won't be anything
yeah.
else. So
And one thing, I guess lastly, other than my thoughts that like I said before, that we didn't realize, I guess we need to do our research when we read some of this stuff, but it's all kind of compiled together. Apparently, Kaiju number 8, it's on Shueisha's Shonen Jump Plus, which is a platform, and I assume it's in Japan mainly because here, in the States or in
We've
the
only
US,
got like Viz Media and the
yeah,
actual
it's
Shonen
just, it's
Jump.
just Shonen Jump all together here in the Americas, where it's just all kind of one together. Granted, they have their different release dates, but it doesn't tell you that it's like, oh, this is Shonen Jump Plus or this and that. So that's more like a service out there in Japan, which I just assume, right? Where it's just digital work, compared to like Shonen Jump, weekly or whatever. You can buy it physically. Kids could go out and buy it, or anyone. You go to a 7-Eleven into there or something like that, or your local bookstore. Where this is like,
So this is just so it's
on your-
almost like a Naver webtoon kind of thing.
yeah, I was seeing, and I think that's why like his like how do you say it? His scheduling is different because he's digital.
Yeah, that would actually make quite a bit of sense.
Yeah.
So well, honestly, that kind of gives us a good transition because Chainsaw Man is going to Shueisha, right?
I'm just going to Shueisha's Shonen Jump Plus.
So it's going to this same platform. So does that mean it's going to be only digital going forward? Has it been only digital so far? I would doubt it.
I think it was no, it's been on the Shonen Jump Weekly. Like, let's say you buy the magazine,
Yeah,
like
so it's in the
yeah,
okay.
it's like in the pages, but now it's going to move to the digital platform where it won't be, obviously the volumes will still come out if you want to buy, the prints and stuff like that, but it won't be in the usual Shonen Jump. And it still come out weekly, they still have their weekly, format. But
Okay.
yeah, it's just that they come out on a different day. But I mean, just a quick thought on like the whole Shonen Jump. I think that's a good move on them, especially with recently, like COVID still being out there. And if I'm being honest, I don't know how often I need to look into it, like when they implement Shonen Jump Plus. Like, do you need to pay more in Japan? Do you need to like aside from having it on your phone or internet, like what's like the scheduling for that,
That's a
So
good question. Yeah, I honestly don't know. Well, and I guess that's kind of the problem sometimes. We get the content delivered differently, so we just kind of accept it for what it is and go, "Oh yeah, it's in Shonen Jump Weekly." But so, yeah, we'll have to take a look into that for sure.
But any final thoughts with Kaiju number 8?
No, honestly, I think that's pretty good. Just talking about the Shueisha thing, I think we can just kind of shift into Chainsaw Man because,
Cool.
yeah, that was a good chapter.
Yeah, it was awesome.